The rain-slicked banks of the Han River gleamed under the sodium lights of Seoul's underbelly, where the city's pulse thrummed with secrets. It was late autumn, the kind of night where the chill seeped into your bones like an unwelcome promise. Ji-yeon Kim, a 28-year-old emergency room nurse at a nondescript clinic in Mapo-gu, had just finished a grueling shift. Her scrubs still carried the faint tang of antiseptic and blood, and her dark hair clung damply to her neck as she trudged along the riverside path, shortcutting home through the shadows of the old cargo docks. She wasn't looking for trouble. Ji-yeon never did. Her life was a careful rhythm of 12-hour shifts, instant ramen in her tiny apartment, and the occasional call to her widowed mother in Busan. But trouble had a way of finding her, especially on nights like this, when the wind whipped the river into frothy whispers and the distant hum of freighters echoed like forgotten warnings. It started with a cry, sharp, childlike, cutting through the patter of rain on her umbrella. Ji-yeon froze, her heart stuttering. At first, she thought it was a stray cat or the wind playing tricks, but then it came again, fainter, from the murky edge where the concrete met the water. She edged closer, her sneakers squelching in the mud, the river's briny scent mixing with the metallic bite of impending storm. There, half submerged against a rusted piling, was a boy no older than 8, clinging to a splintered piece of driftwood. His small face was pale, eyes wide with terror, clothes sodden and torn, as if he'd been dragged through hell itself. "Hey, hold on!" Ji-yeon's voice cracked as she dropped her bag and scrambled down the embankment, the mud sucking at her shoes. The river was swollen from days of rain, its current a deceptive pull that could swallow a grown man whole. She didn't think. She just moved. Grabbing a nearby mooring rope, she looped it around a bollard and inched toward him, her arms outstretched. The boy reached, his fingers icy and trembling, and with a surge of adrenaline-fueled strength, she hauled him onto the bank. He collapsed against her, coughing up river water, his body shaking from cold and shock. "It's okay. You're safe now," she murmured, wrapping her coat around him while fumbling for her phone. No signal. Typical in this dead zone of warehouses and forgotten piers. She needed to get him to warmth, to lights, to help. Carrying him bridal style, his slight weight no match for her nurse's build, Ji-yeon pushed toward the nearest street lamp, the boy's head lolling against her shoulder. His clothes were expensive, silk-threaded jacket, monogrammed shoes, but that detail barely registered amid the urgency. By the time she flagged down a passing taxi, the boy had whispered his name. Min-ho, no last name, no parents mentioned, just a mumbled, "They'll come for me." The driver, a grizzled man with a suspicious squint, eyed them both but said nothing as he sped toward the clinic. Ji-yeon held Min-ho close, monitoring his breathing, her mind racing through protocols. Hypothermia risk, possible trauma, call social services once inside. The clinic's fluorescent lights buzzed like angry hornets as she burst through the doors, shouting for Dr. Park. Nurses scattered, wheeling in a gurney, blankets, and warm IV fluids. Min-ho stabilized quickly, concussion, mild exposure, nothing life-threatening, but his silence unnerved her. He wouldn't speak beyond confirming he was alone. When it happened, his dark eyes flicking to the windows, as if expecting shadows to coalesce. Word spread fast in the underlit corridors. By dawn, as Ji-yeon finally clocked out, 2 men in crisp black suits waited in the lobby. They were the type you didn't question, broad-shouldered, earpieces glinting, postures screaming authority. The taller one, with a scar tracing his jaw like a lightning bolt, stepped forward. "Ms. Kim, the boy, Min-ho Park, you saved him. His father insists on gratitude." Ji-yeon's stomach twisted. Park. The name alone carried weight in Seoul's whispers, tied to shipping empires and rumors of iron-fisted control over the docks. She followed them to a sleek black SUV idling curbside, its tinted windows reflecting the morning haze. Inside, the leather seats smelled of polish and power, the engine purring like a contained beast. They drove in silence through the waking city, past high-rises piercing the smog, until they pulled into an underground garage beneath a towering office complex in Gangnam. The elevator ride was a descent into another world, smooth, silent, with keycard access and a faint scent of sandalwood. When the doors opened to a penthouse suite, Ji-yeon stepped into opulence, floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the Han's serpentine curve, minimalist furniture in teak and steel, and a man standing at the bar, his back to her. He turned slowly and the air thickened. Kang Jun-ho, the man they called the Shadow of the Han, was in his early 40s, impeccably tailored in a charcoal suit that hugged his athletic frame. His face was sharp, handsome in a predatory way, high cheekbones, eyes like polished obsidian, a faint smile that didn't reach them. "Ms. Kim," he said, his voice low and accented with the clipped precision of old money, "you have my son's life in your hands. For that, you have my eternal debt." Ji-yeon swallowed, her pulse echoing in her ears. He's stable, just a scare. Anyone would have... Not anyone. Junho's gaze pinned her, intense, appraising. He gestured to a table laden with fruit, tea, and documents. Minho fell or was pushed from a family yacht last night, rivals perhaps, or an inside play. The river nearly claimed him. You brought him back. She sat, uneasy, as he poured jasmine tea, the steam curling like secrets. He spoke of logistics, security lapses at the docks, a tampered railing, whispers of a rival syndicate from Incheon eyeing his shipping lanes. It was too much, too fast. Debts, threats, a world of burner phones and coded manifests she wanted no part of. But gratitude bound her, and when he offered protection, a driver to her apartment, a discreet bonus for her clinic, she nodded, curiosity edging out fear. As she left hours later, the SUV depositing her at her door with a nod from the scarred guard, Ji-yeon felt the first prickle of surveillance. A black sedan lingered across the street, its engine idling like a held breath. She shook it off, unlocking her door to the familiar clutter of her life. But inside, on her kitchen counter sat a small envelope, undelivered mail, perhaps. No, inside was a single jade pendant, cool and heavy, engraved with a Hanja symbol she didn't recognize. A gift? A marker? That night, as rain lashed her window again, her phone buzzed with an unknown number. "Dinner tomorrow. We discuss your safety. Refuse, and the river's dangers find you too." Who had left the pendant? And why did it feel like a chain tightening around her neck? The morning light filtered through Ji-yeon's threadbare curtains like a hesitant intruder, casting long shadows across her cramped apartment in Mapogu. The air hung heavy with the scent of damp concrete and leftover takeout, a stark contrast to the polished sterility of the penthouse she'd glimpsed the day before. She stared at her phone, the text message glowing accusingly. "Dinner tomorrow. We discuss your safety. Refuse, and the river's dangers find you too." No sender, just digits that screamed burner phone. Her fingers hovered over the reply button, but what could she say? Block it, report it. In Seoul's undercurrents, threats like this didn't vanish with a swipe. Ji-yeon set the phone down and turned to the jade pendant on her counter, its green surface catching the light like a trapped forest. She traced the Hanja symbol, something archaic, evoking old dynasties and hidden oaths. A quick search on her laptop yielded fragments. A mark tied to maritime clans, whispers of loyalty seals from the Joseon era, now co-opted by modern syndicates. Her stomach knotted. This wasn't gratitude, it was entanglement. Minho's rescue had pulled her into a web she couldn't see, spun from the Han's murky depths. By midday, after a restless nap, she called in sick to the clinic, her voice steady, but her hands trembling as she lied about a migraine. Pacing the linoleum floor, worn smooth by years of solitude, Ji-yeon weighed her options. Walk away. Pretend the river incident never happened. But the boy's wide eyes haunted her, and the pendant's weight in her pocket felt like an anchor. Financial need gnawed, too. Her mother's medical bills from last year's fall loomed, and the bonus Junho had mentioned could ease that burden. Curiosity, damn it, played its part. She'd always been the nurse who dug deeper, piecing together patient histories from fragmented charts. And safety? The black sedan from last night had circled her block twice before vanishing into traffic. Ignoring this felt like inviting the shadows closer. She texted back, "Where and when?" The response came instantly. 7 p.m., the Lotus Pavilion. A car will collect you. No pleasantries, just coordinates that pinned a discreet restaurant in Itaewon, tucked behind high walls and velvet ropes. Ji-yeon spent the afternoon fortifying her resolve, showering off the river's ghost, choosing a simple black dress that screamed professionalism over vulnerability, and slipping a pocket knife into her purse, a relic from her hiking days. As evening fell, the city hummed with neon and exhaust, the Han River a distant ribbon under the bridge lights. Precisely at 6:45, a silver sedan pulled up outside her building, its engine a low growl muffled by rain-slicked streets. The driver, a compact man with a neatly trimmed beard and eyes that scanned mirrors like a hawk, nodded without a word. "Ms. Kim," he said, holding the door. No name offered, just the faint click of a child lock engaging as she slid into the leather interior, cool and scented with new car and faint cigarette smoke. The partition was up, opaque, turning the ride into a mobile confessional. Ji-yeon watched Seoul blur past, towering billboards for soju brands flickering in the drizzle, street vendors hawking hot teok under glowing umbrellas, the pulse of K-pop leaking from passing clubs. The journey twisted through back alleys, avoiding main arteries, a subtle evasion that set her nerves jangling. Was this protection or control? At a red light in Yongsan, she spotted it. A grey van idling 2 cars back, its driver hunched over a phone, but his gaze lifting too frequently. Surveillance or paranoia? She shifted, the pendant pressing against her thigh like a reminder. The Lotus Pavilion loomed at the end of a private drive, its facade a blend of Hanok elegance and modern steel, sliding wooden screens etched with lotus motifs, flanked by stone lanterns that cast watery glows on the wet gravel. Security was omnipresent yet invisible. A guard at the gate nodded the sedan through after a retinal scan. His earpiece crackling softly, Ji-yeon stepped out into the misty air, the scent of grilled sanma fish and blooming jasmine wafting from hidden gardens. Her heels clicked on polished pebbles as the driver escorted her inside, past a koi pond where fish darted like secrets beneath the surface. The hostess, poised in a silk hanbok, led her through dim corridors lit by paper lanterns, the walls whispering with the hum of concealed vents. No other patrons visible, just the faint clink of dishes from unseen kitchens. They entered a private room overlooking a manicured courtyard, rain pattering on bamboo leaves like impatient fingers. Junho was already there, seated at a low table of lacquered oak, a bottle of aged soju sweating condensation beside crystal glasses. He rose with fluid grace, his suit tonight a deep navy that absorbed the light, accentuating the silver threads at his temples. "Ms. Kim, punctual. I appreciate that." His voice was velvet over steel, eyes locking onto hers as he gestured to the cushion opposite. No warmth but no threat, yet a server materialized with platters, bulgogi sizzling on hot stones. Banchan of pickled radish and kimchi sharp with fermentation. The aromas grounded her, a tether to normalcy amid the unease. Ji-yeon sat, folding her hands to hide their tremor. "This isn't about dinner. What's the real reason I'm here?" He poured soju with deliberate slowness, the liquid glinting amber. Safety, as I said. Minho speaks of you, his river angel, but angels draw eyes in my world. He slid a folder across the table, its edges crisp. Inside, photos of her apartment building, timestamps from the past week, a grainy shot of the black sedan near the clinic, a manifest snippet, shipping logs from Incheon's docks marked with red flags, discrepancies in cargo weights, unsigned entries for sensitive electronics. These are the first threads. Junho continued, his tone measured like a strategist laying out a board. Rivals from the Lee syndicate, they tampered with my yacht's railing, pushed Minho to send a message, cut my routes, flood the market with cheap imports. But now you've entered the frame. That pendant, a ward from my family line, wear it, it signals alliance. Ji-yun's pulse quickened, flipping through the pages. The photos showed angles no casual observer could capture. Drone shots, hacked CCTV, alliance. I saved a child, not signed up for your war. Why me? Why not just pay off the debt and let me go? His gaze softened fractionally, a crack in the facade. Because debts in my code aren't erased with money. Minho needs stability, and you've given him trust. But walking away, it invites retaliation. The Lees watch the riverbanks, the clinics, the shadows. Last night, a tale on your route home, mine to deter others. The server cleared plates silently, but Ji-yun caught it. A subtle hesitation, the man's eyes flicking to Junho's phone as it vibrated once, unanswered. Inconsistency or nothing, tension coiled as thunder rumbled outside, the storm closing in like a vice. As they rose to leave, Junho's hand brushed her arm, possessive yet restrained. Stay close, Ji-yun, the truth I've kept. It binds us more than you know. But in the courtyard, as the sedan waited, she noticed the grey van again, parked just beyond the gate, its headlights cutting through the rain like accusatory beams. Was it Junho's watch, or something closing in from the dark? The rain had thickened into a relentless sheet by the time Ji-yun stepped into the courtyard, the gravel crunching underfoot like brittle bones. The air carried the sharp tang of wet earth and distant exhaust, mingling with the fading jasmine from the gardens. Junho walked beside her, his presence a solid wall against the storm. But the grey van's headlights pierced the gloom beyond the gate like predatory eyes. It hadn't moved, its engine a low rumble that vibrated through the puddles. "Your ride," Junho said, nodding to the silver sedan as the driver emerged, umbrella in hand. But his eyes flicked to the van, a subtle tightening in his jaw, the only tell of unease in his composed frame. "I'll follow. Safety and convoy." Ji-yun hesitated, the pendant heavy in her pocket, its hanja symbol now feeling less like a ward and more like a brand. "Convoy? This isn't a movie. I can take a cab home." His hand grazed her elbow again, guiding her forward with a firmness that brooked no argument. "In my world, movies end too neatly. Get in." The driver's face was impassive as he held the door, but Ji-yun caught the glint of a holster beneath his jacket, the leather creaking faintly as he moved. She slid into the back seat, the partition descending this time, revealing a small monitor flickering to life. Junho entered a black Escalade behind them, its tinted windows swallowing him whole. The sedan pulled out smoothly, tires hissing on the wet asphalt of Itaewon's back streets. Ji-yun twisted to peer through the rear window, the grey van lurching into motion seconds later, keeping a deliberate distance. Two cars back, weaving through the sparse traffic like a shadow. Her pulse quickened, the leather seat cool against her skin, the faint scent of sandalwood from Junho's earlier presence lingering like an echo. Was this his paranoia bleeding into her, or real peril closing in? The driver glanced in the mirror, his voice crackling through an intercom. "Ms. Kim, stay low if needed. Boss's orders." No name, no explanation, just the hum of the engine accelerating as they merged onto a side road paralleling the Han. The river flanked them now, its surface a black mirror under sporadic bridge lights. The water's slap against concrete barriers, a rhythmic warning. Ji-yon's mind raced through the folder's contents. Those shipping manifests with flagged entries, weights off by kilos that could hide contraband, drugs, tech, or worse. The Lees from Incheon, Junho had said, hungry for his roots. But how did she fit, a loose end from the river? Her phone buzzed in her purse, an unknown number. Same as before. Eyes on you, drive safe. She deleted it, heart hammering, but not before snapping a photo of the screen. Evidence, her nurse's instinct whispered. Document everything, like charting a patient's decline. The convoy snaked through Mapogu's narrower veins, away from the neon sprawl toward her apartment. Streetlights cast sodium glows on rain-slicked alleys, where steam rose from manholes like ghosts from the sewers. Then a jolt. The sedan braked hard, swerving as a delivery truck cut across from a side street, its horn blaring. Too close. Deliberate. The grey van surged forward in the chaos, closing the gap, its high beams flashing once, a signal or a threat. "Contact!" the driver muttered into his earpiece, voice taut. The partition buzzed down fully, revealing his knuckles white on the wheel. "Hold on, Ms. Kim!" He punched the accelerator, the sedan fishtailing onto a deserted wharf road, warehouses looming like silent sentinels on the river's edge. The air through the cracked window carried the briny chill of the Han, mixed with the oily reek of docked freighters, their hulls groaning against moorings. Ji-yon's breath came shallow as the Escalade pulled alongside, Junho's face visible in the passenger window, his expression carved from stone. He gestured sharply. "Split up?" And the vehicles diverged, the sedan veering toward an industrial underpass while the Escalade looped back. The grey van hesitated, then pursued her, its tires spraying water like shrapnel. Under the underpass, the world narrowed to concrete walls, slick with graffiti and the echo of dripping pipes. The driver's radio crackled. Guard rotation compromised at East Dock. Lee's men, 3 vehicles inbound. Compromised how? A bribed shift change? A hacked schedule? Ji-yon gripped the door handle, the pendant digging into her palm. "Stop the car," she demanded, voice steady despite the fear clawing her throat. "I won't be bait." "Can't," the driver replied, eyes on the mirrors. "Boss says you're under protection now. Code's clear. No innocents left exposed." The code. Junho's internal rule he'd hinted at dinner. Never harm the unguarded. A vow forged from some past loss, perhaps a family torn by rivals long ago. But it chafed against her autonomy. This imposed shield, turning her life into a guarded cage. She was no pawn, no river angel to be claimed. They burst from the underpass onto a fog-shrouded stretch by the docks, cranes silhouetted against the stormy sky like skeletal fingers. The grey van was gaining, but then lights, 2 black SUVs materialized from a side gate, blocking the van's path with screeching brakes and flashing hazards. Junho's men. A scuffle erupted in the rear view, figures spilling out, shouts swallowed by the rain, the van's door slamming as it reversed into the night. The sedan slowed, circling back to her building, the tension easing like a released breath. Junho's Escalade rejoined them curbside, and he emerged, coat beaded with rain, striding to her door. "You all right?" His voice was low, concern flickering in those obsidian eyes, but undercut by possession, the way his hand lingered on the frame, as if marking territory. Ji-yon stepped out, legs unsteady on the wet pavement. "That was your tale, or theirs. Ours until it wasn't." He ran a hand through damp hair, silver strands catching the street lamp's glow. "A plant. Lee Syndicate infiltrated my detail. The manifest discrepancies, insider work. Someone close sold access codes for the yacht, maybe the convoy routes too." She searched his face. the pull between his restrained power and her fraying independence sharpening, loyalty versus fear, his code clashing with her ethics. And me, am I just collateral in your vendetta? His gaze held hers, intense, revealing a fracture, years of hidden truths bubbling beneath. No, you're the reason I question it all. Min-ho. He sees in you what I lost long ago. Stay tonight. Safe house nearby. Please. The apartment door loomed, but so did the shadows across the street, where another car idled, engine humming like a promise of more to come. Refuse and walk alone into the night? Or step deeper, bound by a debt that felt increasingly like destiny? If you're enjoying this story so far, tell us in the comments where in the world you're watching from. The rain had eased to a persistent drizzle, turning the streets of Mapogu into a mosaic of reflective puddles that mirrored the sodium glow of overhead lamps. Ji-yeon stood on the curb, the cool mist clinging to her skin like an unspoken warning, her black dress now damp and heavy. Junho's offer hung in the air between them, his Escalade idling nearby with its engine a low, patient thrum. The safe house. He'd said it was just blocks away. A nondescript brownstone tucked behind a row of laundromats, fortified with the kind of security that blended into Seoul's urban sprawl. No penthouse opulence this time, practicality over show. She glanced at her apartment door, the familiar brass number 4B mocking her from the buzzer panel. Home meant solitude, the kind that had always been her armor, nights spent charting patient notes or scrolling through medical journals to drown out the world's noise. But tonight, that armor felt thin. The idling car across the street hadn't moved, its driver a silhouette hunched over what could be a radio or a phone, the faint crackle of static lost to the patter of rain. Junho's eyes tracked her gaze, his posture shifting imperceptibly, hand slipping into his coat pocket, reaching for a burner perhaps, or something more defensive. Ji-yeon, he said softly, the first time he'd used her name without the formal Ms., his voice cutting through the damp chill like a blade. The infiltration tonight. It's not isolated. My guard rotations, someone fed them to the Lees. Access codes for the docks, convoy paths. If they know about you, your building's no fortress. Her independence flared, a spark against the pull of his protectiveness. She wasn't some damsel from a K-drama, rescued and claimed. She was the one who'd pulled a boy from the river, piecing together his shallow breaths without a net. Yet fear whispered of consequences. Her mother's voice on the phone last week, frail with worry over bills, the clinic's understaffed shifts where one wrong move could cost a life. And Minho's face, pale and trusting in the ER lights, tugged at her ethics. Walking away forever? It sounded noble, but the pendant in her pocket burned like a vow she hadn't chosen. Fine, she said finally, the word tasting like surrender. But this isn't permanent. I need answers, not just shadows. Junho nodded, a ghost of relief softening his features as he signaled the driver. The silver sedan pulled up again, its door opening like an invitation to deeper waters. They rode in silence, the partition down this time, allowing the hum of the wipers to fill the space. Ji-yeon watched the side mirrors, spotting the Escalade trailing close, its headlights cutting twin paths through the fog. The route wound through quieter alleys, past shuttered pojangmatcha tents, where late-night workers nursed bowls of tteokbokki, the spicy steam rising like fleeting warmth. No grey van in sight, but the unease lingered, a subtle vibration under her skin. The safe house materialized on a nondescript side street, its facade weathered brick and iron-grated windows, disguised as an old storage unit. A keypad lock beeped as the driver punched in a code. 6 digits, changing nightly, Junho explained in a murmur. And they stepped into a foyer that smelled of polished wood and faint ozone from hidden electronics. Inside, it unfolded into unexpected comfort. A living area with low sofas in neutral tones, a kitchenette stocked with fresh produce and bottled water, walls lined with bookshelves that hid reinforced panels. No overt luxury, but the details screamed control. Cameras in the corners with non-reflective lenses, a panic button disguised as a lamp switch. Minho was there, curled on a couch under a blanket, his small frame dwarfed by the space. A nanny, middle-aged, with a no-nonsense bun and eyes that scanned entries like a hawk, hovered nearby, stirring a pot of juk on the stove, the rice porridge bubbling with the comforting scent of ginger and garlic. The boy looked up, his face lighting with recognition. "Nurse Ji-yeon! Appa said you saved me again." She knelt beside him, checking his pulse out of habit, steady color returning to his cheeks. "Just keeping the river at bay," she replied, forcing a smile. But her eyes met Junho's over the boy's head, the weight of unspoken stakes pressing down. As the nanny served bowls at the low table, Junho pulled a slim tablet from a drawer, its screen awakening with a fingerprint scan. "The truth starts here," he said, sliding it toward her. Maps of the Han's shipping lanes glowed, overlaid with red lines tracing cargo routes from Incheon to Busan. He tapped a cluster of icons near the docks, guard logs time-stamped from the night of the yacht incident. "See this? Rotation at 11 p.m., standard three-man patrol." But the railing was cut hours before, precise shears, professional. And the manifest you saw. Discrepancies aren't errors, they're diversions. Extra containers logged light, but weighed heavy on exit scans. Smuggled components for black market tech, rerouted to undercut my legitimate trade. Ji-yeon scrolled, her nurse's eye for patterns kicking in, the timestamps aligning with a burner call logged in the metadata, originating from a number tied to a Lee underling. "Insider," she murmured, piecing it like a differential diagnosis. "But who?" "Your driver tonight acted off. Hesitated at the underpass." Junho's jaw tightened, a flicker of betrayal crossing his face. "Possible. Loyalty's fragile under pressure. My code. It demands I protect what's mine. No innocence caught in the crossfire. Lost my wife to a similar play years ago. Rival hit on our convoy. She was collateral. Vowed then, no repeats. Minho's why I fight clean, or as clean as this world allows." The confession hung, raw and humanizing, chipping at his armored facade. Ji-yeon's heart twisted, ambition versus prudence, his restrained power clashing with her suspicion. Trust him, or see the code as another chain, binding her autonomy to his legacy. She set the tablet down as thunder rolled outside, the safe house's lights flickering once, a brief blackout, generators humming to life seamlessly. Minho yawned, the nanny guiding him to bed, leaving them alone in the dim glow. Junho poured tea from a thermos, the steam curling like secrets. "The pendant's more than a ward. It's a key. Unlocks family ledgers, hidden accounts. Wear it and you're in. Walk away, and the Lees will use you to break me." She touched the jade cool against her fingers, the Hanja symbol now evoking not just history, but a hidden truth he'd buried for years. "What truth, Junho? You said it binds us." His eyes met hers, intense, the room shrinking to just their breaths. The river wasn't chance, Minho's push. It echoes what took her, and you, saving him. It's like fate's cruel joke, pulling you into the storm I can't escape. A knock echoed from the foyer, sharp, insistent. The driver entered, face pale, holding a soaked envelope. "Boss," dropped at the gate. No one saw the courier. Junho slit it open, pulling a single photo. Ji-yeon at the riverbank that night, mid-rescue, time-stamped from an unseen angle. On the back, scrawled in red ink, "She knows too much. Hand her over or the boy drowns next." The safe house's security hummed louder, but outside, the drizzle masked the crunch of tires on gravel. Another vehicle approaching, unannounced. Was it reinforcement, or the infiltration closing in? The safe house's foyer light cast elongated shadows across the polished wood floor, the air thick with the scent of rain-soaked paper and the faint acrid tang of printer ink from the photo. Ji-yon's fingers tightened around the jade pendant, its edges biting into her palm as she stared at the image, herself frozen mid-reach toward Min-ho's flailing form, the river's foam captured in stark black and white. The timestamp glowed. 10:47 p.m., the exact moment she'd scrambled down the embankment. Not a lucky shot. This was surveillance, high angle, perhaps from a drone hovering silent above the docks, its feed patched into some rival's secure line. Junho's face hardened, the photo crumpling slightly in his fist before he smoothed it flat. "They've been watching longer than I thought." His voice was a controlled murmur, but the undercurrent of fury rippled through it like the Han after a storm. He moved to the foyer window, parting the blinds a fraction, enough to glimpse the crunching tires resolving into a black Mercedes, its plates obscured by mud splatter. No markings, but the way it idled, lights off, screamed uninvited. The driver's door cracked open, a figure emerging in a hooded coat, rain sheeting off the fabric as he approached the gate. "Stay here," Junho ordered the driver, who nodded and melted into the shadows, hand drifting to his sidearm. To Ji-yon, he added softer, "With Min-ho. Nanny's got the interior locked down." But she followed anyway, her nurse's instincts overriding caution, assess the threat, stabilize the scene. The pendant swung against her chest now, slipped on like armor she didn't fully trust, its weight a reminder of the code he'd invoked. Protection at any cost, forged from the ashes of his wife's death in a convoy ambush years back. Loyalty versus her autonomy. His vow pulled her deeper, even as suspicion gnawed. How much of this truth was manipulation? The buzzer crackled, the intruder's voice distorted through the speaker. "Park, open up! Got a message from the boss. Lee wants a sit-down." Lie, Ji-yon thought, catching the hesitation in the cadence, the way Park landed too casual, like a rehearsed alias. Junho's earpiece buzzed faintly, his own security feed relaying from the perimeter cams. The man was alone, but a second vehicle lingered at the street's end, engine humming low, its outline blurred by fog. Junho punched a sequence into the keypad, the gate unlocking with a hydraulic sigh. "Show your face," he said into the intercom, stepping out under the awning, rain drumming on the metal roof like impatient fingers. Ji-yon hovered at the threshold, peering through the rain-streaked glass, the chill seeping through her thin sweater. The man approached, hood low, hands visible and empty, protocol perhaps or a ploy. Up close, he was wiry, mid-30s, with a tattoo peeking from his cuff, a coiled dragon, Inchen's syndicate mark, inked in faded blue. "Lee sends regards," the man said, stopping short of the door, his breath fogging in the cold. He extended a slim drive, black and matte, rain beading on its surface. "Day to dump, your manifests, we know the discrepancies, your clean shipments masking reroutes to Pyongyang. Hand over the girl, and we overlook it. She's seen the river, she talks, your empire sinks." Junho snatched the drive, his eyes narrowing as he pocketed it without a glance. "You think threats by loyalty? Walk away. Tell Lee the code holds, no innocence." The man's laugh was bitter, cut short by a glance over his shoulder. "Code? Your wife's grave laughs at that. We know about the safe house rotation. Codes changed at midnight, but your nanny's phone pinged a tower in Yongsan last hour. Loose lips. Behavioral tell. The flicker of his eyes toward the safe house's side window, where the nanny had drawn the curtains moments ago. Infiltration deeper than a driver, someone inside the fold. Ji-yon's blood ran cold, the Juck's ginger scent still lingered in her nostrils, the woman's efficient movements replaying in her mind. Had the hesitation at dinner been a feint? She backed toward the living area, pulse racing, the floorboards creaking under her sneakers. Minho's room door was ajar, the boy's soft breathing audible, but as she pushed it open, the nanny was there, back turned, murmuring into a burner phone pressed to her ear. "Yes, she's inside. The photo delivered. Extraction window." Ji-yeon lunged, snatching the phone from the woman's hand, the device clattering to the floor. "Who are you calling?" Her voice was steel, honed from ER confrontations, but the nanny whirled, face twisting from maternal calm to something feral. A small syringe glinted in her other hand, sedative likely, prepped for a quiet handover. "You don't understand," the woman hissed, lunging forward, the needle arcing toward Ji-yeon's arm. She dodged, years of triage reflexes kicking in, grabbing the woman's wrist and twisting until the syringe dropped. They grappled, the scuffle muffled by the rug, breaths ragged in the confined space. The nanny was stronger than she looked, fueled by desperation or payoff, Lee's bribe outweighing Junho's code. Ji-yeon kneed her midsection, the woman crumpling with a gasp, but not before a shout echoed from the foyer. Outside, chaos erupted. The intruder's hand dipped to his coat, drawing a silenced pistol, the metallic click drowned by thunder. Junho moved like shadow, disarming him with a precise strike, elbow to the throat, knee to the gut, the man slumping into the mud. But the second vehicle revved, tires spinning gravel as it barreled forward, headlights flooding the awning in blinding white. Gunfire popped, muffled bursts shattering the side mirror of Junho's Escalade, glass shards tinkling like ice. "Ji-yeon!" Junho's roar cut through, as he dragged the intruder inside, slamming the door. The driver fired back from cover, the acrid bite of cordite mixing with rain. The attacker's car fishtailed, retreating into the fog, but not before a stray bullet pinged off the safe house wall, embedding in the brick inches from the window. Inside, Ji-yeon pinned the nanny with a knee to her back, zip ties from a drawer, stocked for contingencies, securing her wrists. "Talk," she demanded, heart pounding, the woman's cheek pressed to the floor. "The phone. Who?" Tears streaked the nanny's face, defiance cracking. "Money. Lee's offer. Enough for my brother's debts, your rescue. They knew from the clinic cams, hacked the feeds. The boy's next if I don't deliver you." Junho burst in. The drive clutched in his hand, blood trickling from a shallow graze on his forearm, shrapnel, not a direct hit. He plugged the device into the tablet, files spilling across the screen, ledgers mirroring his own but twisted, shipping manifests with forged signatures, access codes to his dock patrols, even a blueprint of the safe house marked with entry points. "She's the leak," he confirmed, voice laced with betrayal, the personal code fracturing under the weight. His eyes met Ji-yeon's, possessiveness yielding to raw vulnerability. "This truth. I hid it because it repeats. My wife's convoy, betrayed by a trusted aide, history's cycle, pulling you in." The nanny's burner buzzed on the floor, an incoming call, the screen lighting with a single word. "Extract." Ji-yeon silenced it. But outside, the drizzle masked distant sirens. Police or more syndicate reinforcements. The safe house's generators hummed, light steady, but the air felt charged, the walls closing in. Junho knelt beside her, bandaging his arm with a field kit, his touch on her shoulder a bridge between his world and hers, trust tested, bonds forging in the fire. "We move, now." But the whisper I've kept. "It's not just loss. Minho's not my only tie to you." As they bundled the nanny for transport and roused Minho, the tablet's final file loaded, a grainy video, time-stamped years ago, showing a young woman, Junho's wife, at the river's edge, but her face, eerily similar to Ji-yeon's own, a doppelganger, or a deeper secret unraveling. What hidden bloodline had the river dredged up, binding them beyond rescue and debt? The safe house's air grew stifling, the faint hum of the generators underscoring the tension like a distant heartbeat. Ji-yeon's eyes locked on the tablet screen, The grainy video looping in silent accusation, a woman in her 20s, dark hair whipping in the wind along the Han's banks, her profile sharp and familiar, high cheekbones, the subtle tilt of her chin when she turned toward the camera. It wasn't identical to Ji-yeon's reflection in the ER mirrors, but close enough to send a chill racing down her spine, colder than the rain seeping under the door. Timestamp: 15 years ago, predating Min-ho's birth. Junho's wife, he'd said, lost to a rival's ambush. But this footage, pulled from the nanny's drive, showed her alone, glancing over her shoulder as if sensing the drone's invisible eye. Junho paused the video, his bandaged arm flexing as he leaned against the kitchenette counter, the metallic tang of blood mixing with the lingering ginger from the abandoned juk. Min-ho stirred in the next room. The nanny's muffled protests silenced by the driver's zip ties and a gag improvised from a dish towel. Outside, sirens wailed faintly through the drizzle, growing closer. Police response to the gunfire or syndicate cleanup. Junho's earpiece crackled. Perimeter clear, boss. Second vehicle peeled off toward the docks. No tails on the convoy route. Ji-yeon's voice broke the hush, edged with the steel she'd honed in 12-hour shifts. Who is she, and why does she look like me? She jabbed a finger at the frozen frame, the woman's eyes, dark, searching, mirroring her own unease. Autonomy clashed with the pull of his revelation. She wanted to bolt, to reclaim her life of scrubs and solitary evenings, but the photo of her river rescue pinned her like a specimen slide. He exhaled slowly, rubbing his temple where silver hairs caught the lamplight. Her name was Sumin, my wife. This footage, it's from a family archive, hacked by the Lees. She wasn't just collateral, she ran messages for my father before we married. Discreet ledgers, coded drops at the riverside, safer than the open lanes. His gaze drifted to the window, rain-tracing rivulets like tears on the glass. The ambush that took her, a turncoat in the convoy, fed the route to rivals. I was late. Min-ho wasn't even born yet. Vowed then, no more blind trusts. The code keeps innocence out, but it chained me to the shadows. Ji-yeon paced the worn rug, the floorboards creaking under her sneakers, the safe-house's confines pressing in like a holding pattern. And the resemblance? Coincidence in a city of millions? Suspicion warred with a deeper curiosity, her ethics demanding truth over his possessive shield. The pendant at her throat warmed against her skin, its hanja symbol now pulsing with implication. A family seal, he'd said, unlocking ledgers, but what if it unlocked more? Junho pulled a slim ledger from a hidden drawer. Its leather cover cracked from years of concealment, pages yellowed like old prescriptions. He flipped to a marked section, handing it over with a reluctance that tightened his jaw. Not coincidence. Sumin had a sister, your mother, Ji-yeon. Distant branches of the same clan, maritime blood from Busan's old smuggling lines. She left that life young. Changed her name after a fallout with my father over a botched shipment. Raised you clean, away from the docks. I didn't know until after the river. Min-ho's description of you matched old photos. The truth I hid? You're tied by blood, not just debt. Walking away endangers you more. The Lees dig lineages for leverage. Her world tilted, the ledger's ink blurring as she scanned entries. Faded hanja notations, shipping manifests from the 90s, linking Kim and Park surnames through shared routes. A notation on Sumin's kin, protected, uncontacted. Financial need flickered, her mother's Busan calls about bills suddenly layered with subtext. The fall last year, perhaps no accident, but a subtle pressure from old ghosts. You knew when I saved him, and said nothing. Hurt laced her words, the push-pull intensifying. His legacy restraining power, her independence fracturing under family secrets dredged from the Han. I suspected after the clinic footage surfaced, he admitted, voice low, the scar on his jaw twitching in the dim light. Confirmed it last week. Discreet inquiry through a contact at the family registry. Didn't want to bind you tighter. But the nanny's leak. They know now. That drive has your mother's old address circled, a threat to pull her in. The sirens peaked outside, blue lights flashing through the blinds like erratic strobes. Junho's phone buzzed. A burner, screen showing a convoy map, red dots converging on the docks. We can't stay. Extraction to the warehouse district, my secondary safe. Minho's packed. Driver handles the nanny for questioning. He moved with purpose, slinging a duffel over his good shoulder, the faint clink of metal inside, spares for the arsenal hidden in the walls. Ji-yeon nodded, grabbing her purse, the pocket knife a small comfort against the unraveling. They bundled Minho, the boy rubbing sleep from his eyes, clutching a stuffed bear that smelled of childhood innocence amid the cordite haze. The driver hauled the nanny to the Escalade's trunk, her eyes darting with final defiance as the lid slammed. Outside, the drizzle had swollen to a downpour, pounding the awning like gunfire echoes. The silver sedan waited, engine growling, wipers slashing arcs across the windshield. As they pulled out, the safe house receding in the mirrors, Ji-yeon twisted to watch the street. No immediate tails, but a distant flicker. Headlights banking off a warehouse wall, too deliberate for random traffic. Junho's hand rested on the seat between them, not touching, but close enough to bridge the chasm. This bloodline. It doesn't claim you, but it explains the river's pull. Stay with us, or the Lees will use it as a noose. The convoy accelerated toward the Han's industrial fringe, tunnels looming ahead like veins in the city's underbelly. Sodium lights blurred into streaks, the river's briny scent infiltrating through vents. Minho leaned against her, whispering, "You're like family now, right?" But in the rear view, that flicker resolved. A black SUV merging from a side alley, closing the gap with predatory grace. Compromised route, or the nanny's final call rerouting the hunt. The tunnel entrance swallowed them, concrete walls echoing the engine's roar, darkness pressing in as lights stuttered overhead. A jolt rocked the sedan, something metallic scraping beneath, a deliberate caltrop scatter. Tires held, but the pursuing SUV surged, its grille filling the mirror. Junho barked into his earpiece, "Flank them! Dock blockade!" But as they emerged into the warehouse sprawl, cranes silhouetted against storm clouds, a gate ahead swung open too slowly, guards waving frantically. Gunfire chattered from the shadows, sparks dancing off shipping containers stacked like tombstones. The Escalade veered left, drawing fire, while the sedan fishtailed toward a loading bay. Ji-yeon shielded Minho, heart slamming, the ledger's truths colliding with survival's raw edge. Victory would cost, exposure, perhaps a graze like Junho's, or the realization that blood and code wove a net tighter than any river current. If this tale already has you hooked, hit the like button. It helps us bring more hidden stories to light. The warehouse district sprawled along the Han's fog-choked edge, like a forgotten industrial beast, its rusted cranes groaning under the assault of the downpour. Shipping containers loomed in towering stacks, their corrugated sides slick with rain and streaked with sodium light from flickering security lamps. The air reeked of diesel fumes and brackish water, the river's relentless lap against concrete pilings underscoring the chaos like a muffled drum. Ji-yeon's sedan fishtailed into the loading bay, tires screeching on oil-slicked asphalt as bullets pinged off the reinforced undercarriage, muffled thuds that vibrated through the frame like distant thunder. "Down!" Junho barked, his body curling protectively over Minho in the back seat. The boy's whimpers lost to the roar of the engine. Ji-yeon pressed low, her arm shielding the child, the duffel strap digging into her shoulder. The driver's hands danced on the wheel, swerving behind a wall of pallets stacked with unmarked crates. Diversions, perhaps, from Junho's legitimate shipping facade. The pursuing black SUV barreled through the gate, its headlights slicing the gloom, but the Escalade flanked it from the left. a sharp crack of return fire echoing off the metal walls. No gore, just the sharp scent of gunpowder blooming in the wet air, tires smoking as the rival vehicle clipped a container and spun. The sedan lurched to a stop in the bay's shadow, the driver killing the lights to blend into the dark. Junho's earpiece crackled. "Boss! East flank secure. 2 down, but they're calling reinforcements. Lee's dock crew, burn a relay from the nanny's phone." He nodded grimly, scanning the tablet's convoy map, red icons pulsing like wounds. The ledger's revelation still burned in Ji-yon's mind. Her mother's hidden ties to Sumin, the maritime bloodline weaving through Busan's smuggling veins, a legacy Junho had buried to spare her the shadows. But now it fueled the hunt. The Lees didn't just want routes, they craved leverage, a way to fracture his code from within. "Inside," Junho urged, popping the door and hauling Minho out, the boy clinging to his leg like a lifeline. Ji-yon followed, the rain lashing her face, cold needles that blurred her vision. The loading bay's massive doors ground open on hydraulic rails, revealing a cavernous interior lit by harsh halogens, forklifts dormant in rows, manifests fluttering on clipboards like pinned secrets. The air inside hung heavy with the musty tang of tarpaulins and stacked pallets, the distant hum of generators masking their footsteps. Guards materialized from alcoves, rifles slung low, their faces etched with the strain of compromised rotations, bribed shifts, access codes sold for scraps. They hustled toward a freight elevator at the far end, its cage rattling as it descended from an upper level. "Secondary safes 2 floors up," Junho explained in a low rush, his bandaged arm not slowing him. "Armored, off-grid power. We hold till dawn, extract via river barge." But Ji-yon's eyes caught the inconsistency, a clipboard on a nearby crate. Its shipping log opened to a page of discrepancies, weights off by kilos, entries for electronics rerouted to shadow ports. The same flags from the folder at dinner, but fresh ink, time-stamped tonight. Insider work, deeper than the nanny. Someone in this very warehouse feeding coordinates. The elevator dinged, doors sliding with a metallic groan. They piled in, the driver punching the button for level 3, the cage shuddering upward amid the creak of chains. Minho buried his face in Junho's coat, the fabric damp and smelling of rain and resolve. "Appa, is the bad man gone?" the boy whispered, voice small against the machinery's whine. "Soon," Junho replied, ruffling his hair with his good hand, the gesture a rare fracture in his armored poise. His eyes met Ji-yon's, the possessiveness tempered by something raw. Gratitude, perhaps, for her steady presence amid the unraveling. "The code demands it. No child pays for our sins." But she saw the cost etching lines deeper into his face. The graze on his arms seeping through the bandage, the weight of legacies colliding, his vow against the bloodline pulling her in. Autonomy eroding under the siege of family secrets. The elevator jolted to a halt, doors parting to a narrower corridor lined with locked offices, fluorescent strips buzzing overhead. The secondary safe unfolded at the end, a reinforced room with steel walls, cots bolted to the floor, and a bank of monitors flickering with perimeter feeds. The bay below swarming with shadows. The black SUV abandoned, its driver slumped over the wheel from the Escalade's precise shots. No fatalities visible, just the logistics of evasion, guards dragging the vehicle to a scrap chute, erasing traces before police drones swept the area. Inside, Junho secured the door with a biometric scan, the lock beeping affirmatively. The space was Spartan. A small galley with instant ramen packets and water jugs, a medkit stocked like her ER station. Ji-yon knelt to check Minho's vitals, pulse steady, no fever from the chill, while Junho plugged the drive into a secure laptop, files cascading across the screen. "Look!" he said, voice tight as he pulled up a ledger scan, Hanja notations mirroring the pendant symbol, entries linking her mother's alias to Sumin's drops. The truth I whispered. Your aunt's work funded your family's quiet life, scholarships, the clinic job. I honored it by staying silent, but the Lees unearthed it through hacked registries. They want you as the key to old accounts, frozen assets that could tip the roots. Ji-yeon's fingers traced the screen, the pull between his restrained power and her independence sharpening like a scalpel. Blood doesn't bind me to this war. I walked into the river for a child, not a throne. But fear gnawed. Her mother's Busan apartment, vulnerable to a staged accident like the fall, the clinic's cameras already breached once. Trust versus suspicion, his code a shield, yet it cloaked truths that chained her deeper. A monitor flickered, external cam showing movement at the warehouse's river exit. A barge idling under cover of fog, but figures boarding it wore unfamiliar jackets, no earpieces. Partial discovery hit like a gut punch. Tampered manifests meant tampered escapes. The barge crew, the driver muttered from the door, radio crackling. Rotation logs say ours, but behavioral tell, one's scanning plates wrong, like casing for a jam. Junho's face darkened, the silver at his temples catching the light as he grabbed a burner. Abort river, tunnels instead. Convoy from the underlevel. But as he spoke, the lights stuttered, a blackout plunging the room into red emergency glow. Outside, the storm howled, jamming signals, while footsteps echoed in the corridor, deliberate, closing in. The nanny's leak had bloomed into full betrayal, a guard rotation flipped, access codes cascading failure. Ji-yeon scooped Min-ho, the boy's trust in her eyes, an anchor amid the hazard. Junho pressed a pistol into her hand, lightweight safety off, his touch lingering. We fight through. The treasure's not the ledgers, it's this, us. But the door rattled, a muffled demand filtering through. Park, surrender the girl, or the boy pays the river's toll. In the red haze, as the first breach attempt sparked against the lock, Ji-yeon wondered, had the bloodline doomed them, or forged the only path to survival? The red emergency lights pulsed like a failing heartbeat in the secondary safe room, casting elongated shadows across the steel walls that seemed to contract with every distant thud. The air thickened with the metallic bite of overheated electronics and the faint ozone from the stuttering generators. The blackout's grip turning the warehouse into a labyrinth of hazards. Ji-yeon's grip tightened on the pistol Junho had pressed into her hand, its weight unfamiliar. Cool polymer against her palm, safety disengaged with a click that echoed her resolve. Min-ho huddled behind her, his small breaths ragged, the stuffed bear clutched like a talisman against the encroaching dark. The door rattled again, a muffled thud followed by the sizzle of a cutting torch. Plasma arc, likely, scavenged from the warehouse tools, its blue-white glow seeping under the frame like invasive veins. Park! Last chance! The girl's bloodline seals your fate! Hand her over or we burn it all! The voice was distorted, amplified through a cheap modulator, but the accent betrayed Incheon roots, laced with the desperation of a cornered operative. Junho positioned himself at the barricade, a toppled filing cabinet reinforced with duffel straps, his own sidearm drawn, the graze on his arm darkening the bandage, but not his focus. They're stalling, he whispered to Ji-yeon, eyes flicking to the monitors where feeds glitched, grainy shapes moving in the corridor, 3 figures in tactical vests, one fumbling with a jammer that scrambled the outer signals. Human error in the chaos, their torchwork too noisy, alerting the remaining loyal guards via backup radios. Tunnels below, we go now, before the full crew rotates in. His code flickered in his gaze, protect the innocents, no matter the exposure. But the bloodline revelation hung between them. A chain forged from Sumin's sister, Ji-yeon's mother, tying her not just to legacy, but to the very threats circling like river currents. Ji-yeon nodded, her nurse's triage mind mapping the escape. Assess, stabilize, extract. She scooped Min-ho, the boy's weight grounding her as they edged toward a concealed panel in the wall, a service hatch to the under-level tunnels, accessed by the pendant's Hunja symbol pressed into a hidden slot. It clicked open with a pneumatic hiss, revealing a narrow shaft descending into musty blackness. The air below, carrying the damp rot of the hand's underbelly and the faint drip of condensation. "Driver covers the door," Junho instructed, the man nodding as he fired a suppressing burst through a vent slit, muffled pops that bought seconds, not minutes. They dropped into the tunnel, the ladder slick with moisture, rungs echoing their descent like accusations. The space unfolded into a concrete vein, dimly lit by emergency strips that buzzed erratically, walls etched with service conduits and forgotten wiring from the warehouse's pre-war foundations. The storm above rumbled through the ceiling, vibrating dust motes into the air, while distant generators hummed like trapped beasts. Junho led, tablet in one hand mapping the route, old smuggling paths his father had carved, now a lifeline, his free hand brushing Ji-yon's arm in silent reassurance. Possessiveness yielded to partnership, her independence no longer a barrier, but a strength in the push-pull of survival. Footsteps echoed from above, the breach succeeding, shouts filtering down as the intruders poured into the safe room. A grenade's pin clinked somewhere distant, not lethal but a flashbang to disorient, its muffled boom shaking loose rivulets of water from the pipes. The driver radioed once, "Go, I'm pinned," before static swallowed him, cost mounting, loyalty sacrificed, one man exposed to buy their flight. Ji-yon glanced back, heart clenching but pressed on. Minho's whispers of, "It's okay, Angel," echoing her river rescue in miniature. The tunnel twisted toward the river docks, sodium vents casting watery glows on puddles that reflected their hurried forms. Junho halted at a junction, ear to the wall, vibrations from a parallel passage, rival reinforcements converging via a compromised service map from the leaked drive. "This way," he pivoted, leading into a narrower branch lined with rusted grates, the air growing brackish with the hand's breath. Behavioral tells sharpened the peril. A faint whir overhead, not storm wind, but a drone's propellers, its thermal scan piercing the fog to track heat signatures. Tech in common use, piloted by a Lee spotter on the warehouse roof, human error in its low battery hum giving them an edge. Ji-yon's mind raced through clues, the nanny's pinged phone, the tampered manifests. Now this, organized infiltration exploiting institutional limits, Seoul's port authority too underfunded to patrol these veins. "The bloodline," she said between breaths, voice tight as they splashed through ankle-deep water. "It's not leverage. It's the key to their endgame. Those frozen accounts, they fund your clean routes, starve the Lees." Junho's profile sharpened in the gloom. "Yes. Sumin's work. Your aunt's drops. Built the barriers. I hid it to protect you like your mother wanted. But the river, it dredged the truth. You're no outsider. You're the vow unbroken." His words were a whisper, intimate amid the hazard, the code's restraint cracking to reveal the treasure, not power but trust forged in shadows, a found family rising from betrayal's ashes. They emerged at a grated outlet overlooking the docks, the Han churning black under storm-lashed skies, freighters' horns wailing like alarms. The barge waited, no, compromised, its crew milling with subtle unease, one checking a burner too frequently. Junho signaled a hidden flare from his coat, red burst arcing into the rain, summoning the true convoy, two speedboats slicing from the fog, engines cutting through the waves with precise throttle. Gunfire erupted from the tunnel mouth behind, bullets ricocheting off grates, one grazing Junho's thigh, a shallow furrow, blood blooming dark on his pants, but he waved it off, hauling Minho aboard the lead boat. The extraction blurred into motion, ropes thrown, engines roaring as they pulled into the river's maw. The drone's whir drowned by the downpour. Rivals' shots plumed water around them, but the boats flanked, return fire scattering the dock crew in retreat. No clean victory. The warehouse would burn under staged arson to erase evidence, Junho's legitimate front exposed to audits, the cost a year's roots crippled by scrutiny. Yet as the Han bore them toward a hidden marina upriver, safe houses awaiting in the pre-dawn haze, Ji-yon bandaged his leg with strips from the medkit, her hands steady, Min-ho asleep against her side. Dawn broke grey over the city, the storm yielding to fitful light that gilded the penthouse windows once more. Junho stood at the bar, a fresh ledger open, not of shipments but vows, a pledge scrawled in Hanja, binding protection without possession, her autonomy honored in the code's evolution. The adventure stripped the illusions, he said, eyes meeting hers across the room, Min-ho playing quietly nearby. Power fades, loyalty endures. You've given us that, memory stronger than any river. Ji-yon touched the pendant, now a symbol of chosen ties, the bloodline transformed from chain to bridge. The threat had been real, organized in ledgers and lies. But victory's cost, injury's sting, exposure's shadow, paled against the found family they'd carved from the dark. Her mother's call later that day, voice lighter with anonymous aid settling old bills, sealed it. Transformation through trust, outlasting the spoils of empires. Subscribe to our channel for more incredible tales of loyalty, danger, and found family. See you in the next story.